Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Though it's quite a few days that I haven't uploaded any video. But today the chapter that we are going to start is actually, for most of the students, it may really appear very confusing because the way it starts, it's quite different. I mean, you may not be able to understand or analyze what the poet is trying, what the narrator is trying to say, or the author is trying to say. And the story starts at a very unusual event. So I've tried to explain this video in a very, very simple manner. And there are few concepts and few theorems and few logics also that I will be explaining line by line. So the very first thing that you need to understand is that there is a narrator here. Okay, and he is traveling in a train. So the Jijamata Express sped along the Pune-Bombay route considerably faster than the Deccan Queen. So this Jijamata Express is actually a train, and there is a slight comparison that the train goes from Pune to Bombay, like it follows this route, and it's faster than the Deccan Queen. Deccan Queen again here is another train. So what they're trying to say is that this train on the same route is actually faster. It travels faster. There were no industrial townships outside Pune. So you can imagine that the narrator is traveling his distance from Pune to Bombay. And so there is a slight description about what used to happen at that point of time in Pune. So they're saying that there were no townships, there was not much industrialization at that point of time. So they're definitely talking about a certain specific time. The first stop, Lonavala. Okay, so this stop is from which train? Jijamata Express, which is going from Pune to Bombay. So the very first stop was Lonavala. Came in 40 minutes. So it just took from Pune in 40 minutes. The narrator was able to reach Lonavala, which was the very first step. The Ghat section. Ghat here means the mountains. Okay, or hills, you can say, slight hills. That followed was no different from what he knew. Now, he here is the narrator who's traveling in the train. So he's there. There is a comparison. Like narrator is expressing his side. He's telling that he was traveling in a train, and there were so many things that he was able to see. So the very first thing was he came to the first station, which was Lonavala, and after that station there were hills, and that particular section was known to him. Now, how it was known to him? Has he traveled earlier? No, he has not actually traveled earlier, but he says that that part was known to him. Now, before I start, let me give you a small glimpse of it. Here, there is one scientific phenomena used, and the phenomena is the man in the story, the protagonist, the main actor. What he does is he meets with an accident. He actually gets himself stuck in a truck, and then what happens is he travels to another world of his imagination, like parallel world, like you also call it as multiverse or other places, the replica of Earth, you can say. So whichever reality he was currently in, after meeting that accident, he goes to another reality. He jumps from the reality. Now, this is something imaginative. Nobody must have experienced this thing in real life, but it is completely imaginative. So the narrator here, he shifts from one reality to the other after he meets an accident. Now, what is that process called? What is the theory behind it? That is again in the chapter. So now when he goes to the another reality, this Jijamata Express, Pune Bombay route, everything is in the second reality. So you can say that we are going to talk about second reality. That's why he's saying that the Ghat section that follows was no different from what he knew. That means from his original reality, he knew that there will be a section, and this section is the same. He has already been to Bombay, but in his previous reality, and this is the new reality. So all those things that he's telling you right now are part of the new reality that he has come into. You have to understand this very clearly. The train stopped at Karjat only briefly. Like there was another station, Karjat, and briefly means for a very short time the train stopped and went on at even greater speed. And from Karjat, it went on at a very high speed. It rode through Kalyan. So Kalyan is again a station, and road means that it made a loud noise when the train is moving at a faster speed. You know that you are able to hear the sound of a fast moving train. Meanwhile, the racing mind. Now, why is this mind racing? Because just understand, suppose if someday you meets with an accident and you jump to some another reality, like you go to another world, and suppose if I talk about myself and my name is Palak, so I have a unique identity in this universe. Suppose if I go to some other place and there also I find another Palak, but she has a different lifestyle, different topic, how would you feel? There will be thoughts in your mind. So that is why the narrator here, he has racing thoughts, like he's continuously thinking as to what has happened. of Professor Gaitonde had arrived at a plan of action in Bombay. So his original name was Professor Gaitonde in the real world, in the first world. Okay. So he knew that when he reaches Bombay, what is he going to do? Indeed, as a historian, now the profession of Gaitonde was he was an historian. He felt that he should have thought of it sooner. He would go to a big library and browse through history books. That was the surest way of finding out how the present state of affair was reached. Now he was able to understand, he wanted to understand there were certain things which were very indifferent in the reality. Now, if I talk about the first reality and the second reality, he was able to find out very significant changes. So, how these changes came in the second reality, he wanted to find out using the history books. He wanted to go to the library and read, like, he wanted to know the culture of the second universe, the second world. So, he wanted to go to a library and find out all such things. He also planned eventually to return to Pune and have a long talk with Rajendra Deshpande, who would surely help him understand what had happened. That is assuming that in this world there existed someone called Rajendra Deshpande. So now he knew that he had to, yeah. So Rajan Deshpande was the friend of the narrator, but he was in Pune. He used to be there in Pune. So the narrator finally decided that after he goes from Bombay to Pune, he will meet his friend Rajesh Deshpande and he will tell exactly what has happened. So first thing that he decided was in the second reality that he will first of all go to the library and find out the detail of the second reality, like why it has happened, why things are not as same as the first reality. And the second thing he would do is he would go back to Pune and then tell his friend Rajendra Deshpande about what has happened. And he would try to introspect as to why this has happened. That is assuming that in this world there existed someone called Rajendra Deshpande. So assuming means he assumed that in this world also he will have his friend named as Rajendra Deshpande. He was already there in the previous one, but now he felt that probably in the previous world he had, Rajesh as his friend. So he imagined that in this world also he will be having. But it was only his assumption. The train stopped beyond the long tunnel. It was a small station called Sarhad. So now finally the train crossed a very long tunnel and they stopped at a platform called as Sarhad. An Anglo-Indian in uniform went through the train checking permits. This is very important here. So if you can see, this era is of the time when they found that Anglo-Indians, like British people also have, were found there. There were people who were half Indian, half British, and, who had actually been living in foreign countries. He automatically started watching them. And what were they doing? They were checking permits. Now it's very unusual if you travel in a train, a TT comes and they only check your ticket. They will never check your permit. Permit means are you permitted to travel? Do you have the permit in front of the trucks also? In many of the places you must have seen NP written, which is national permit. That way, if the truck is actually been given the authority to move the borders or not. So the narrator, yes, he was very surprised. He said, why everybody is asking about the national permits and so on. This is where the British, just a second. This is where the British Raj begins. You are going the first time, I presume, Khan Sahib. So Khan Sahib was another person. You can say Khan Sahib, this man, he was just another traveler. You can say he was just another passenger who was traveling. He was another traveler who was traveling, and he said that uh, they are checking permit because now you're entering into a British Raj. That means an area which is owned and ruled by British. Yes, the reply was factually correct. And like the narrator asked that, have you like this person, the next person, the traveler, he asked, "Ki, you are looking at so many places and so many people so weirdly. So have you not traveled to Bombay before?" He says that the reply was factually correct. Factually correct means as per the fact, yes, because in this world he has not traveled to Bombay, but in another world he has traveled. So he said, yes, it is correct. Gangadhar Pant has not been to this Bombay before. He ventured a question, and Khan Sahib, how will you go to Peshawar? So the next question that came was, now here are two people, if you can see, one is the narrator and another is Khan Sahib. So they're just having a discussion. Khan Sahib also is to go somewhere and narrator has to go to Bombay. So Khan Sahib notices that narrator is behaving very awkward when he sees the Anglo-Indian. So he asks that, have you not ever been to Bombay before? Narrator says, yes, I have never been to Bombay earlier. And then he says that, narrator says that, how will you go to Peshawar? Now who's going to Peshawar here? Khan Sahib. Now he's explaining how and what route he's going to use. This train goes to the Victoria terminus. This Victoria terminus in current days is called as Chhatrapati Shivaji station, which is in Mumbai. I will take the Frontier Mail tonight out of Central. So he is going to change the trains. Like Abhi right now, he has go to the Victoria terminus, and from there he will change to the Central station, and he will take Frontier Mail. Frontier Mail. How far does it go? And by what route? So the narrator was very curious and he asked, okay, that's okay, you're going to change your train, but how far it will go? Like, what is the last station? Bombay to Delhi, then to Lahore, and then to Peshawar. A long journey. I will reach Peshawar the day after tomorrow. So he said that is going to be a very long journey and it's going to take a little bit of time. Thereafter, Khan Sahib, just a second. Yeah. Thereafter, Khan Sahib spoke a lot about his business and Gangadhar was a willing listener. So they started some conversation. For in that way, he was able to get some flavor of life in India that was so different. Now, why is India different here? Because it is not the India that he lived. It is the India of the second reality. So he wanted to discuss a lot of things with the narrator and with the like the narrator wanted to discuss a lot of things with the Khan Sahib. The train now passed through the suburban rail traffic. The blue carriages carried the letters. So, like the train had now passed main places, and there were some blue carriages, and GVMR was written on it. So again, the narrator was not able to understand what is this GVMR. The full form of GVMR was Greater Bombay Metropolitan Railway. And this was explained to him by Khan Sahib. See the tiny Union Jack. So Union Jack are the flag of England. Painted on each carriage, a gentle reminder that we are in the British territory. So all the carriages of the train had Union Jack, like a sign of the England flag, and it was a representation that we are still under the British rule. But in India, they had already gone over it. Like in the first reality that from where he had come, things were not the same. The train began to slow down beyond Dadar and stopped only at its destination, Victoria Terminus. The station looked remarkably neat and clean. The staff was mostly made up of Anglo-Indians and Parsis, along with handful of British officers. So again, when he actually stops at the Victoria's terminus, the station is very clean, but the kind of people are very different. There are Parsis also, Anglo-Indians also, and there are handful of British officers as well. As you know, why see this is also very important. Handful of British officers means that they are that particular area is being ruled or is being governed by the Britishers. As he emerged from the station, Gangadhar Pant and Gaitonde is the same. There are two names used. Found himself facing an imposing building. Imposing means something which is very strange. So as he came out of the railway station, he saw a very big building and it was very shocking for him. The letters on it proclaimed its identity to those who did not know this Bombay land. So the letters, I mean, what was written on it? It was just a description for people to understand which building this is and what was written here, East India House, headquarters of the East India Company. Now he was very shocked. He said, East India Company is still working, but in the reality, they have already won over the East India Company. They have already got independence. So he was very shocked. He was like, still they are being run by the East India Company because it was the second reality. Prepared as he was for many shocks, Professor Gaitonde had not expected this. The East India Company had been wound up shortly after the events of 1857. Now, this thing, according to him, in his first reality, after the events of 1857, East India Company was stopped. So, why the same thing is not happening in the second reality? This was a major confusion here. At least that is what history books said. History said that East India Company stopped after 1857. Yet here it was not only alive, blood flourishing, but in the second reality, this East India Company was flourishing also. It was being run also, but at the same time, it was being flourished also. So history had taken a different turn. Now, what is the major change from reality one to reality two? Now, when I talk about reality, you have to understand there are two different worlds. I'm just talking about the reality. Here, history has changed. The geographical location has not changed, but the history has changed. So there is a different twist to the story. Here, in reality one, East India Company had stopped after 1857, but in reality two, East India Company was actually being run by multiple people and after a long time. How and when had it happened? Now, this was his curiosity. He wanted to visit the library to find out what is the history. As he walked along Hornby Road, as it was called, he found a different set of shops and office building. Now, this road was again visited by him in the first reality. When he went to the first reality, he saw different kind of shops, but when he came to the second reality, he found different shops. There was no handloom house building. Instead, there were Boots and Woolworth department stores, imposing offices of Lloyds, Barclays, and other British banks, as in a typical high street of a town in England. So basically, the complete road was filled with offices of England, like shops of England, because it was reality too. Now, this was something very strange. He turned right along Home Street and entered Forbes building. I wish to meet Mr. Vinay Gaitonde. Now, there's an interesting twist here. This Vinay Gaitonde is no one but the professor himself. So now what he's trying to do, he's trying to meet himself in the second reality. When he switches from first reality to second, according to him, he should also be there, right? If the same building is there, if the same station is there, in the first reality, Bombay is there. In the second reality, also Bombay is there. In the first reality, there are many stations that he had to cross. In the second reality, also there are many stations that he has to cross. So naturally, things are same. So now the first thing that he wanted was he went to the Forbes building where he is working currently in the reality one. Now he goes to the Forbes building of second reality and he tries to speak to Mr. Vinay Gaitonde. It is himself only. His name has been changed. It is a different name in the second reality. He said to the English receptionist. She saw through the telephone list, the staff list, and then through the directory of employees of all the branches of the firm. She shook her head and said, I'm afraid I can't find anyone of that name either here or in any of our branches. Are you sure he works here? So when the professor he goes to the building and he speaks to the receptionist, the receptionist denies and says that there is no such name like Vinay Gaitonde, and rather I have checked the complete history. I think even years before this person has not worked. So are you sure that Vinay Gaitonde is actually a person because his name is not mentioned in the list? Now this was very shocking. Here again, some reality has changed. In the previous reality, he was working in the Forbes building, but now in the second reality, there is no one of his name. This was a blow. That means this was a shock, not totally unexpected. Not totally unexpected means because his reality has changed, he had assumed that there will be certain changes. If not complete, but there will be certain changes. If he himself were dead in this world, what guarantee had he that his son would be alive? Indeed, he may not even have been born. So now he says that how do I find out myself? I can find out myself even if I have a family. But here she's saying that there is no one like Gaitonde, or probably there was some Gaitonde and he expired. So when the person only has expired, how can we imagine that he must have a son and a family? So it was impossible for him to find himself in the second reality. He thanked the girl politely and came out. So as a nice gesture, he said, thank you for the information that you provided. And then he came out from the building. It was characteristic of him not to worry about where he would stay. So this is one point that you can say about the characteristic of this person, that he did not worry about where he has to stay. He was not very concerned. He never he never used to get worried about small things. His main concern was to make his way to the library of the Asiatic Society to solve the riddle of story. So his main concern was he had to go to the library of the society and find out the riddle, that how has this history changed. The first instance of history that he has seen is the East India Company. So he wanted to find out how this change came. Grabbing a quick lunch at a restaurant, he made his way to the town hall. Now he had lunch and then he moved to the town hall. Yes, to his relief, the town hall was there and it did house the library. So first he went to the town hall. He was very happy that the town hall was again exactly in the same manner as it was in the reality one. And inside the town hall, there was one library where he wanted to go. He entered the reading room and asked for a list of history books, including his own. So because he was an historian, he had published books. So he asked for a variety of books, and those variety of books also included his own books. His first 5 volumes, parts, arrived on the table. He started from the beginning. So he had written 5 books and he exactly asked the librarian to get those books. Volume 1 took the history up to the period of Ashoka. Volume 2 to Samudragupta. Volume 3 up to Muhammad Ghori. And Volume 4 up to death of Aurangzeb. Up to this period, history was as he knew it. The change evidently had occurred in the last volume. So basically, he asked for 5 volumes and he started reading the history, and these books were written by him. So the first one told about Ashoka, second about Samudragupta, third about Ghori, and fourth about Aurangzeb. So up till here, up to the 4th volume, history was same. But something has happened in the last volume, which he could not relate to. Reading volume 5 from both and inwards, both and from the starting he could read and from the end, like to just understand where he has to find that information. Gangadhar Pant finally converged on the precise moment where history had taken a different turn. Now he understood on in which part this history has been changed, because of which complete things have changed. Now you have to understand something, children. If one thing changes, then the effect of that thing happens to multiple things. For example, if I am a teacher and I have to go to school to, uh, you know, teach a chapter. And suppose if on that day I don't go and teach a chapter. So how many changes will take place if I don't go to the school? The students will talk. They will not, in my period, they will be free, right? They will not be studying. Moreover, they will not be able to practice. Possibilities are that they will lose interest in the chapter that I was teaching. So there can be certain kind of, I may lose my salary also. My salary can also be deducted. So these are the changes, and they have happened because of one change which I did, and the change was that I chose to not go to school. So that is what he wanted to find out. He wanted to read history books. He wanted to read volumes of history book and figure out where is that point exactly at which the history has changed. So in the first four volumes, there was no change. In the fifth volume, there was a change. Now, what was that change? That page in the book described that Battle of Panipat, and it mentioned that Marathas won it handsomely. Abdali was routed, and routed means defeated, and he was chased back to Kabul by the triumphant Maratha army led by Sadashivrao Bhau and his nephew Vishwasrao. So, of course, these two were the leaders of Maratha army, and in the reality one, Battle of Panipat was actually won by the Mughals as per our reality. But now, because the narrator has shifted to some other reality, he found that this history has changed. It was not the Mughals who won, Abdali did not won, but it were the Marathas who won. So, because Marathas had won, there were several changes that took place, and it is at that point where the history changed. The book did not go into a blow by blow account of the battle itself. That means, blow by blow here means detailed description. In that book, there was not a complete description of that thing. Rather, it elaborated in detail its consequences for the power struggle in India. That means it did not have much information about Battle of Panipat, but other things were written, like how did India struggle to get the freedom and how did India had the strength. But about the Battle of Panipat, there was very less things written. Gangadhar Pant read through the account avidly, very carefully. The style of writing was unmistakably his, yet he was reading the account for the first time. So why they're saying is that in the second reality, he was reading his own books. So it is very clear that he only had written those books. But because it was in the second reality, he felt as if he's reading for the first time because he has already written those books. But those books were now a part of the second reality. So in the second reality, he was reading it for the first time. Their victory in the battle, their here is Maratha. Now, the explanation is their victory in the battle was not only a great morale booster to the Marathas, but it also established their supremacy in northern India. Right? Now, in Battle of Panipat, in reality, what happened is that the Mughals took over. But here, what they're saying that the Marathas won, and when they won, their morale, they were motivated, they were encouraged, and they started taking control over the northern India. So it was not the Mughals or Britishers who took control of it, but it was rather Marathas, as per the reality too. The East India Company, which had been watching these developments from the sidelines, got the message and temporarily shelved its expansionist program. Now, East India Company was also present at the time because India was not completely free. So the East India Company, while they were watching the Marathas and the strength and by the encouragement that they were fighting the war, they temporarily stopped the expansionist program. Now, what is the expansionist program? They wanted to expand themselves into different parts of India so that they can completely rule. So now this is very awkward. In the book, it is written that the Britishers stopped expanding themselves because they were scared of the Marathas. But in reality, one that we belong to, it was not true. For the Peshwas are ministers here, the immediate result was an increase in the influence of Bhau Sahib and Vishwasrao, who eventually succeeded his father in 1780. The troublemaker Dada Sahib was relegated means to put down, to the background, and he eventually retired from the state politics. So after this victory of Bhau Sahib and Vishwasrao, there were many ministers who were also encouraged, right? And there was one person, Dada Sahib, who eventually did not like that Bhau Sahib and Vishwasrao were getting so much importance. He was like opposition to them, but then he was told to retire, or he retired voluntarily from the state politics. Then he actually did not play much role in the process. To its dismay, the East India Company met its first Max's match in the new Maratha ruler, Vishwasrao. He and his brother Madhavrao combined political acumen with valor and systematically expanded their influence all over India. The company was reduced to pockets of influence near Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras, just like its European rivals, the Portuguese and the French. Now, here, this Maratha ruler Vishwas Rao and Madhav Rao, they were considered to be a very clever people, right? So now East India Company wanted to collaborate with these two Marathas because anyway they had to rule and anyway they had to expand themselves. So they were trying to, help, trying to offer help. Now, what help did they offer? Madhav Rao and Vishwas Rao, they were very smart. They knew that there is a need of development of technology because they could see that in many parts of the Europe, technology has taken over. So they wanted in their particular area also that the technology should take place. But who's better in technology? It was the East India Company. They had money, they had resources. So East India Company took this as an opportunity that these two brothers are looking for some kind of technological development or advancement, and probably we can help him into that. For political reasons, the Peshwas kept the puppet Mughal regime alive in Delhi. In the 19th century, the de facto rules from the Pune were astute enough to recognize the importance of technology age drawing in Europe. They set up their own centers for science and technology. Here, the East India Company saw another opportunity to extend its influence. It offered aid and experts, like I told you. They were accepted only to make the local centers self-sufficient. So these both brothers, like Marathas, they accepted the East India Company offer only for this purpose, that they wanted the local centers to be self-sufficient. So they should be good in technology and they could actually make their own technology centers. Now, this was somewhere around 18th century, 19th century. The 20th century brought about further changes inspired by the West. India moved towards a democracy. By then, Peshwas had lost their enterprise. So now, by the 20th century, the Peshwas, who were really motivated and encouraged, and now they were ruling the northern part of India, they actually lost the enterprise because now it was a democracy. Democracy is that people have to elect. But right now, before that democracy, what was the condition? Two people are fighting and whoever wants is going to rule. But now this is not going to take place. There were no war, there were no fight or arguments. Now in the 20th century, they have started a democracy system. So Peshwas were not elected and they lost. And they were gradually replaced by democratically elected bodies. As I told you, the Sultanate at Delhi survived during this transition, largely because it wielded no real influence. So there was Sultanate in Delhi, right? Even like they were also like Peshwas. So the Sultanate of Delhi, they survived. Nobody asked them to, re-elect the Sultanate because they did not have any influence. They were not that important. Nobody asked Sultanate of Delhi to take a major decision. Rather, they were only told that you are supposed to do this. So they actually sustained there. Like nobody took asked them to re-elect. That there were no elections done for Delhi. They were like the Sultanate of Delhi is just doing their job, so let it be. The Shenshah of Delhi was no more than a figurehead to rubber stamp the recommendation. That's it. So he just had to follow what was told to him, made by the central parliament. So the Shenshah of Delhi was actually following the parliament. So there was no changes required. He was not having his own rule. As he read on, Gangadhar Pant began to appreciate the India he had seen. It was a country that had not been subjected to slavery for the white men. It had learned to stand on its feet and knew what self-respect was. So this India is of the second reality that he was reading. First point, they were not slaved by the white men. Like there was no apartheid system, black and white thing in this world, in this reality. It has not taken place. This is how he got to know about the history. So the first thing was that there was no apartheid system. Second was that they were interdependent. They were self workers. They were not dependent on somebody for the Britishers or something. They used to do their work on their own. And third, they knew what self-respect was. They were very particular about the self-respect. From a position of strength and for purely commercial reason, it had allowed British to retain Bombay as the sole outpost on the subcontinent. That lease was to expire in the year 2001, according to Treaty of 1908. Now here, there was a unique treaty, which was not there in the reality one. You see, there were multiple treaties in reality one also. But here in reality two, there was a different treaty. And that different treaty was Treaty of 1908. So according to this 1908, it was a lease that they had given Bombay on rent only for some professionals and financial reasons. That as soon as 2001 will come, you have to remove your rule from here. You have to go from here and Bombay will be given to us back. So that means it was a lease, it was a contract. They had not ruled over us by cheating or something. In fact, the Marathas and all the government bodies, the democracy people, they had put a lease of in 1908 to ask the Britishers to rent Bombay for little bit of time and then help the people out there. And once they are advanced, they have to give back Bombay. Gangadhar Band could not help comparing the country he knew with what he was witnessing. Now, what the comparison is where the country that he knew from reality one and the country that he is watching from reality two, he was bound to compare because he could not believe what he was reading. But at the same time, he felt that his investigations were incomplete. How did the Marathas won the battle? See, he got to know that Marathas won the battle. But how? In the real reality, Marathas actually died. So here, how did they won? Like, what happened exactly? To find the answer, he must look for account of the battle itself. He went through the books and journals before him. At last, among the books, he found one that gave him the clue. It was Bhau Sahib Bahanchi Bakar. Now, these Bakar, I'll tell you, Bakar are like a small magazine which are made for recreational and entertainment purposes. That means you cannot refer to them for factual things. Bakars are small magazines which just have fun information, like in diagrammatical form, but they do not have a real evidence. They are just referred to the entertainment purposes. So now the narrator wanted to find out what exactly happened in the Battle of Panipat. Even if the Mughals have lost and the Marathas have won, how did they won? Like what happened? What was the situation at that point of time? So for that, he wanted to refer to multiple books. And he also referred to the books along with this Bhau Sahib Banchi Bakhar, in which he got to know a clue, like a small hint. And the hint was, although he seldom relied on the Bakhar, seldom means rarely, he never used to rely on these magazines because I told you, these magazines do not have any relevance, like any factual description. For historical evidence, he found them entertaining to read. It was just for entertainment. Sometimes buried in the graphic but doctor accounts, he could spot the germ of truth. That is what I told you in graphic. Like sometimes the hint were hidden in the picture form. So he read those books, maybe he would be able to find some clue as to what happened in the Battle of Panipat. He found one now in a three-line account of how close Vishwasrao had come to being killed. So there were three-line account where it was written that Vishwasrao was about to be killed, but he escaped the death. And then Vishwasrao guided his horse to the melee where the elite troops were fighting. And he attacked them. And God was merciful. A short brush past his ear, even the difference of a till, same, would have led to his death. So now what exactly is mentioned in the book? That Vishwasrao was so brave that he alone, with his horse and a sword, he actually entered the area of the troops, elite troops, like enemies alone, single-handedly. He had the sword and he entered into the area where there were so many people, where there were so many enemies. He single-handedly went there and he attacked them. Single-handedly he attacked so many people. And God has had mercy on him. God was very kind that somebody tried to shoot him. And that particular bullet, you can say, it just crossed his ear, past his ear. And it did not hit him directly because if it would have been there, he would have been dead. At 8 o'clock, the librarian politely reminded the professor the library was closing for the day. Now it was 8 o'clock in the evening, and the librarian has to politely remind that it is time for the library to be closed. Gangadhar Pan emerged from his thought. Now he was lost in his thought, but when he heard the voice of the librarian, he woke up. Looking around, he noticed that he was the only reader left in the magnificent hall. So that means he was the only person who was left in this hall. I beg your pardon, sir. May I request you to keep these books here for my use tomorrow morning? By the way, when do you open? Now, there was a simple request made by this person, and the request was that he wanted the librarian to keep the books on the table next day when he comes, so that he doesn't have to go and search the books. At 8 o'clock, sir, the librarian smiled. Here was a user and researcher right after his heart. So the librarian said, okay, I'll keep these books on the table. Next day, when you come in the morning at 8, the library will be open and you will find the same books on the table. And the librarian was very happy because somewhere he could understand that he's a researcher. And he was very happy that a good researcher had come to the library. As the professor left the table, he shoved some note into his right pocket. Absent-mindedly, he also shoved the bakhar into his left. He was making some note and he kept his note in his pocket, right pocket. And you can say intentionally, maybe by mistake, he kept those the bakhar also, like the magazine also. He found a guest house to stay in and had a frugal meal. He then set out for a stroll towards the Azad Maidan. So now he was going on a visit for the Azad Maidan. In the Maidan, he found a throng moving towards the pandal. Throng means a lot of people who were going towards the pandal. So now he saw that in that Madan, in that playground, there was a big tent house, a big pandal, and there were people who were going towards there. So a lecture was to take place. Force of habit took Professor Gaitonde towards the pandal. Force of habit means now he just saw that there is something happening in the pandal and he wanted to go there. The lecture was in progress, although people kept coming and going. So there were people who were going also, and they were coming. But Professor Gaitonde was not looking at the audience. He was staring at the platform as if mesmerized. There was a table and a chair, but the letter was unoccupied. Letter means the second one. So he was not worried about the audience. He was not staring at the audience, but something that caught hold of his sight was the table and the chair. The chair was all vacant. It was not occupied. So the narrator here, like Professor, he was very surprised. He said that how come such a big meeting is taking place? A lot of people are coming and going, and the chair is empty. There's nobody sitting there. The presidential chair unoccupied. Presidential means somebody has to be the head of the meeting, and that head person is not sitting. That sight stirred him to the depth, like he was very confused, like a piece of iron attached to a magnet. He swiftly moved towards the chair. He moved towards the chair like you move a piece of iron towards the magnet. There is a source of connection. So he felt the same connectivity and he moved towards the table and the chair. The speaker stopped in mid sentence, too shocked to continue, but the audience soon found a voice. So there was a speaker. He was not the lead of the meeting or the conference. He was just a speaker. He was just saying something and he stopped because the narrator sat on the chair and he was not supposed to sit on that chair. So before he could say anything, the audience found their voice. The audience started shouting, vacate the chair, vacate the chair. That means leave the chair. This lecture series has no chairperson. So now everybody said that there's no chairperson here, away from the platform, mister. And everybody started shouting that you have to be away from the platform. The chair is symbolic, don't you know? Now here they said that the chair is very symbol. There was a conversation between the narrator and the people, and the crowd was saying that you have to get away from the chair because it doesn't belong to you. What nonsense! Whoever heard of a public lecture without a presiding dignitary? Professor Gaitonde went to the mic and gave vent to his views. Ladies and gentlemen, and unchaired lecturers like Shakespeare, Hamlet, without the Prince of Denmark. Let me tell you. So now here, the narrator was very confused and he wanted to help the audience. And he said that, see, you cannot have a meeting without a chairperson. Somebody has to be there. Like somebody has to be the main character who's going to observe and give his own opinion. You cannot have a meeting without a chairperson or a presiding dignitary, somebody who's of importance. Like Shakespeare, Hamlet also, it was a novel written by Shakespeare. And if you remove the Prince of Denmark, he's the main character. So how can you have this Hamlet? The story will have no meaning because it doesn't have the main character. But the audience was in no mood to listen. But the audience was very, very rigid here, and they did not want to listen anything that the narrator was saying. Tell us nothing. They said that we don't want to hear nothing. We are sick of remarks from the chair, of vote of thanks, of long introduction. So what they said that already we are listening to the speaker. He has to say vote of thanks. He had to say remarks. He has to say introductions. We're already tired. Now we don't want to hear anything else from you. We only want to listen to the speaker. We abolished the old customs long ago. Keep the platform empty, please. And everybody said that we are not interested in listening to you. We only want to listen to the chairperson, like the person who's speaking. But Gangadhar Pant had the exercise of speaking at 999 meetings. Like Gangadhar had already given lectures and conferences in almost 999 meetings. So this kind of opposition was nothing new. He knew how to calm down the audience. And had faced the Pune audience at its most hostile. He kept on talking. So he did not listen to the audience and he kept on speaking because, as per him, he had experience of 999 meetings. He had spoken at 999 meetings. And, whenever you speak or give conference, you will always have people who, object to your opinion or who object to your things. He soon became a target for a shower of tomatoes, eggs, and other objects, but he kept on trying valiantly to correct this sacrilege. Finally, the audience swarmed to the stage to eject him bodily, and in the crowd, Gangadhar Pant was nowhere to be seen. This is very important. This line is extremely important. Now, what happened because everybody started throwing potatoes and tomatoes and all kinds of vegetables on his face, but he kept doing that because he thought that he will be able to convince the mob. But the mob was not ready to listen to him, and in that anger and frustration, they picked him up. The crowd picked the Gangadhar Pant, the Professor Gaitonde, and threw him in a very strong force. And when he fell, he again change the reality, and he was again invisible in the reality 2. So now you can say that again he has done a gradual shift from reality 2 to reality 1. First, he came from reality 1 to reality 2, where he met with an accident with a truck. Now, again, when they threw him and he went on the floor, he again switched his reality. Now he is into the present reality where he used to live. That is all I have to tell Rajendra. And now is all I know is that I was found in the Azad Maidan in the morning, but I was back in the world I'm familiar with. Now, where exactly did I spend those 2 days when I was absent from here? Now, these 2 days, what are these 2 days? These 2 days are the days when he met with an accident. So when he met with an accident, for 2 days, he had transferred to the new world where he was traveling. So when he came back to the original world, he spoke to his friend Rajendra and said, what happened when I was actually away from this 2 days? Rajendra was dumbfounded by the narrative. It took him a while to reply. Professor, before just prior to your collision with the truck, what were you doing? Rajendra asked. So now this is the point where I'm going to explain you some scientific theories which are very important for you to understand. So when the professor kept telling Rajendra that, see, I met with an accident, then for 2 days I was in some another world, and again I came back. So now something was going in the mind of professor. There was something that was going in the mind, and he understood that something has happened, something or the other has happened, and it is not going to be, you can say, he understood that something, some logic has came to his mind, and then he asked a question. Then when you met with an accident, what were you thinking? What was the thought going in your conscious mind? I was thinking of the catastrophe theory and its implication for history. Catastrophe theory is the same that I told you. It is like the destruction theory. If something, like there is a moment, if a change happens in a moment, then what are the implications of that change? This is what he was thinking, that in history also, this catastrophe theory may have some implications. Like if you change a part of the history, like if you change a moment in the history, then how many things can get changed? If you see in the reality too, what changes you have observed? Because Marathas won, the Britishers could not rule, and the Marathas started to rule. So a complete shift in the uh, history. Indians were not enslaved; they were not enslaved. So this is very interesting. So he was just thinking the same, and then automatically, when he met with an accident, he actually went into his own thoughts of this change in history. Right, I thought so. Rajendra smiled. So Rajendra smiled, and now he understood that what has happened. Don't smile smugly in case you think that it was just my mind playing tricks and my imagination running amok. Look at this. So the professor said that you don't have to laugh because I have got some evidence also. And triumphantly, Professor Gaitonde produced his vital piece of evidence, a page torn out of a book. So he had already kept some page in his pocket. If you remember, while he was in the library, he had kept that notes. And along with that note, he had mistakenly kept that Bakhar also. So he had a page from that book, from the reality too. Rajen read the text on the printed page and his face underwent a change. Gone was the smile and his face came a grave expression. He was visibly moved. Now, after reading that page, because in that page, as you know, the Battle of Panipat was mentioned and the history was completely changed. So when he actually saw that he is having a paper as an evidence, Rajendra was very shocked and he stopped smiling. Gangadhar Band pressed home his advantage. Now, for Gangadhar Pant, it was an advantage because if he had not got this proof, he would not be able to explain that he had actually traveled to another world. This piece of paper was a proof that he had appeared in the another world, and if he had not brought this, nobody would have believed him. I had inadvertently slipped the Bakar in my pocket as I left the library. I discovered my error when I was praying for my meal. I had intended to return it the next morning, but it seems that in the melee of Azan Medan, the book was lost. Only this torn off page remained, and luckily for me, the page contains vital evidence. It's just saying that in that troubling fight, he could only spend one page, like he could only carry one page, and that was the evidence itself. Rajendra again read the page. It described how Vishwas Rao narrowly missed the bullet and how that event taken as an omen by the Maratha army turned the tide in their favor. Now look at this. Gangadhar Pant produces his own copy of Bausai Bakhar. Open on the television page, the counter enters, and then Vishwas Rao guided his horse to the melee where the elite troops were fighting and he attacked them. And God expressed his displeasure. He was hit by the bullet. So this is reality one. So in the reality, what has happened that Vishwas Rao actually had a horse. He went to the troops, but he was attacked and he was dead. This is reality one. Now, a change in this reality. change in this history happened in the second reality, and then the history changed. Professor Gaitonde, you have given me food for thought. Until I saw this material evidence, I had simply put your experience down to fantasy. So now he says that, Professor, you have given me a thought. Now I'm going to tell you something about it. If you had not shown me this evidence, I would have just thought that it is your fantasy. Maybe you were just daydreaming. But now, because you have shown me this evidence, I have a strong reason to tell you. But facts can be stranger than the fantasies, as I'm beginning to realize. Fact, what are the facts? I'm dying to know. So now the professor was very curious to understand that what is actually has happened with me. Rajendra motioned him to silence and started pacing the room, obviously under great mental strain. Finally, he turned around and said, Professor Gaitonde, I will try to rationalize your experience on the basis of two scientific theories as known today. Whether I succeed or not in convincing you of the fact, only you can judge, for you have indeed passed through a fantastic experience, or more correctly, a catastrophic experience. Now, here the friend of Professor Gaitonde, like Rajendra, he said that I'm going to tell you two theories, and those two theories will explain you what exactly has happened with you. And I may be able to convince you, I may not be able to convince you, but I will try my level best. Please continue, Rajendra. I'm all ears. That means I'm very attentive. Professor Gaitonde replied. Rajendra continued pacing as he talked. You have heard a lot about the catastrophe theory at that seminar. Let us apply it to the Battle of Panipat. Wars fought face to face on open ground offer excellent example of this theory. The Maratha army was facing Abdali troops on the field of Panipat. There was no great disparity between the latter troop and the opposing forces. Their armor was comparable, so a lot depended on the leadership, on the morale of the troops. The juncture at which Vishwas Rao, the son of Heer to the Peshwa, was killed proved to be the turning point. As history has it, his uncle Bhau Sahib rushed into the melee and was never seen again. Whether he was killed in the battle or survived is not known. But for the troops at that particular moment, that blow of losing their leaders was crucial. They lost their morale and fighting spirit. There followed an utter rout. Now he's explaining something. He's explaining that in Battle of Panipat, if you know that everything was same, like the Marathas were strong, they had a strong army, and Abdali and Mughals, they also had a strong army. So, what was that factor that could have changed the condition of the war? The factor was when Vishwas Rao died. So, the morale of the Maratha army must have gone very low. This was a turning point in the war. And it is also believed that when Vishwas Rao died, his uncle Bhau Sahib came there, but he was not found. He actually changed his location. Like Bhau Sahib is still alive or dead, it is not known because he was invisible. Exactly, Professor. And what you have shown me on that torn page is the course taken by the battle. When the bullet missed Vishwas Rao, a crucial event gone the other way, and its effect on the troops also the opposite. It boosted their morale and provided just the extra impetus that made all the difference. So Rajendra said that you have shown me a piece of paper where it showed that the bullet has not hit the Vishwas Rao, and Vishwas Rao was saved. So that was again a turning point, and the rest of the events they also changed because of that particular event. Maybe so. Similar statements are made about the Battle of Waterloo, which Napoleon could have won. But we live in a unique world which has a unique history. This idea of it might have been is okay for the sake of speculation, but not for reality. Now, here the professor said that similar kind of things are also said for the Battle of Waterloo. The Battle of Waterloo must also have changed if Napoleon had won, but Napoleon did not win, and that is what the reality is. That is what the truth is. Now, maybe in some another reality, Napoleon would have won, but such things are not confirmed. It is just in the head, it is just in our minds. I take the issue with you there. In fact, that brings me to my second point, which you may find strange. But please hear me out. Now, then he explains the second point. Ganadharpan listened expectantly as Rajendra continued. What do we mean by reality? We experience this directly with our senses or indirectly via instruments. But is it limited to what we see? Does it have other manifestation? That reality may not be unique has been found from experiment on very small systems of atom and their constituent particle. When dealing with such system, the physicist discovers something startling. The behavior of this system cannot be predicted definitely, even if all the physical laws governing those systems are known. Take an example. If I fire an electron from a source, where will it go? If I fire a bullet from a gun in given direction at a given speed, I know where it will be taken at a later time, but I cannot make such an assertion for the electron. It may be here, there, anywhere. I can at best quote odds for it being in a specified location at a specified time. So now what he's trying to explain is about reality. Now the like this person Rajendra says, what for you is reality? Is reality limited to only that thing that we can see? It is not true because he explained, like suppose if I fire an electron from an atom, I do not know the electron will go in which position. That means I don't know the complete reality of the electron. It may move to some other orbit also. It is not known to me. But if I shoot a gun, I know that it is going to go straight. The lack of determinism in quantum theory, even an ignorance student like me has heard of it. Now we explain this thing by the lack of determinism. So imagine many world pictures. In one world, the electron is found here. In another, it is over there. In yet another, it is in a still different location. Once the observer finds where it is, we know which world we are talking about. But all those alternative worlds could just exist the same. Rajendra paused to marshal his thought. Now he said, just imagine, take your experience as experience of an electron. When you shoot an electron, it may go to first orbit, second orbit, third orbit. We do not know. But it will go to all these orbits. See, it will go to this place also. It will go to this place also. It will go to this place also. Now, these things are the three parallel realities that we are talking about. Similarly, happened with Gangadhar Pant. While he was in Bombay and Pune, he met with an accident and there was a shift in the reality. He again went to some another reality, but he was also in the previous reality, but he was in coma. So this is how he wanted to explain that we may have several realities. You cannot say that we have only one reality because you do not know if you throw an electron in which direction it will go. It might go in all the three directions. But is there any contact between those many worlds? Now, Professor understood that yes, there may be a concept of different worlds, but is there any connection? Yes and no. Imagine two worlds, for example, in both an electron is orbiting the nucleus of an atom. Like planets around the sun, Gangadhar Pant interjected. Not quite. We know the precise trajectory of the planet. The electron could be orbiting in any of a large number of specified states. These states may be used to identify the world. In state number one, we have the electron in a state of higher energy. In state number two, it is a state of lower energy. It can make a jump from high to low and send out a pulse of radiation, or a pulse of radiation can knock it out of state into state number one. Such transitions are common in microscopic systems. What if it happened on a macroscopic level? Now, what he is trying to explain is, suppose this is an electron and it is orbiting around an atom. Okay, and it has different orbiting around the nucleus. So, see, if it has electron is in the higher energy, then it is going to come to the stage two. From one to two, if it has higher energy, and if it has lower energy, then it will go from two to one. That means there can be different transition taking place. So, similar transition when they're happening in the smaller world, such transition can also take place from the bigger world. Like we can go from this place to another place and come back from another place to this place. This is what he wanted to explain. I guess to get you, you were suggesting that I made a transition from one world to another back again. Fantastic though it seems, this is the only explanation I can offer. My theory is that catastrophic situations offer radically different alternatives for the world to proceed. It seems that so far as reality is concerned, all alternatives are viable, but the observer can experience only one. Now, what he say, the like Rajendra, he says, as for me, this is the only explanation that I can understand. If you talk about micro level, an electron can move to any of the places, right? And these are all the possible places where it can go. It may go this side also. So we cannot find out the reality of an electron. The point is, whichever place you find, that becomes a reality for you. Suppose if you see the electron moving in this direction, this becomes a reality for you. But it doesn't mean that these all realities are fake. Someday you might see this, someday you might see this. So that means we are constantly living in multiple realities. Only the point is that whichever reality we choose to figure out, we choose to find out is our reality, right? And suppose if you are present in one reality, then of course your conscious mind or subconscious mind in the other realities will not work. You will experience one reality at a time, but that doesn't mean that there are other realities also. There are other also, but you as an observer can only identify one reality. By making a transition, you were able to experience two worlds, although one at a time. So now he gives an example of Gangadhar Pant only, that he met with an accident, he got into coma. So now he's not able to experience the first reality, but he made a transition to the other reality. The one you live in now and the one where you spend 2 days. One has the history we know, the other a different history. The separation or bifurcation took place in the Battle of Panipat. You neither traveled to the past nor to the future. You were in the present but experienced a different world. Of course, by the same token, there must be many more different worlds arising out of bifurcation at different point of time. So he said you're not gone to present or future or past. It is just that you were in the present only. As Rajendra concluded, Gangadhar Pant asked the question that was beginning to bother him most, but why did I make the transition? So now there was one very important question. Gangadhar Pant understood that this has happened, but the next question was, why only with me? Why did I only travel and why not other people travel? If I knew the answer, I would solve a great problem. Unfortunately, there are many unsolved questions in science, and this is one of them. But that doesn't stop me from guessing. Rajan smiled and proceeded, you need some interaction to pause the transition. Perhaps at the time of the collision, you were thinking about the catastrophe theory and its role in wars. Maybe you were wondering about the Battle of Panipat. Perhaps the neurons in your brain acted as a trigger. A good guess, it was indeed wondering what course history would have taken if the result of the battle had gone to the other way. Professor Katonde said that was going to be the topic of my 1000 presidential address. Now, like when the Gangadhar Pant, he asked that, why only me? So Rajendra said that I'm not sure if I'll be able to give the correct answer because there are so many questions and so many answers, so many mysteries unsolved in the science. But what I know is because at that point of time you were thinking about Battle of Panipat or you were thinking about the catastrophe theory and how it affects how it would have an implication on the war. Maybe because you were thinking about it, so you entered into that particular reality. You had a shift from the current reality to that reality where you would find out what happened. So this could have been a reason. Now he said that very good idea, very good suggestion, and I had actually thought that I will be taking this as the next like I had if you know in the previous lines he had concluded triple nine meetings already. So he said now the 1000 meeting will be done in the same. I will be doing this 1000 meeting and the topic will be the same. Now you're in the happy position of recounting your real life experience rather than just speculating. Rajendra laughed, but Gangadhar Pant was grave. No, Rajendra, my 1000 address was made on the Azad Maidan when I was so rudely interrupted. No, Professor Gatonde, who disappeared while defending his chair on the platform, will now never be seen presiding at another meeting. I have conveyed my regret to the organizer of the Panipat seminar. So now Rajendra was very happy. He said, now you're going to speak up on this topic. How catastrophic theory must have had a change on the war, and you already had experienced the catastrophic theory. So now this 1001 conference is going to be very interesting. But now here, Professor said that he's not going to give any more conferences because he has already given this 1000 conference in the reality too. And he was not treated nicely. People were against him. They were not ready to believe anything. So now he has said sorry that he will no longer be doing this conference any further. So I hope this chapter was a little complicated, and but I've tried to explain you in the easy way possible. So keep sharing my videos, keep liking. Thank you.